Welcome to the Away End. I'm Daniel Alarcón.
I'm John Green.
Hey, man.
Hey.
So high energy here, John. Stay with me. So for the first segment of our show today, we're going to talk about the dark and the light, the troublesome and the hilarious, the complicated and the silly. So we should start with the hard stuff, I think, right?
Yeah.
And I think we can't get away from it. And although neither of us are really necessarily enthused or even particularly knowledgeable, perhaps, I think we can't not talk about Iran, the war that's currently happening, and I guess just in the context of the away and what it might mean for the World Cup. So just to give a little bit of background, currently because of the bombing that the United States and Israel are doing, there's been a bunch of back and forth, right? On the one hand, there was a statement from Iran saying we're not going to participate. Then Gianni Infantino came out and said they definitely were, and even thanked the U.S. President Donald Trump for making them welcome. And then later in the day, Trump tweeted, or truthed, whatever, I really don't believe it's appropriate that they be here for their own life and safety. And then apparently the Iraqi players can't even leave Baghdad to go play their intercontinental playoff, which should be happening later this month. And there's reports that the United Arab Emirates, a close ally of the United States, is kind of lobbying FIFA to be given Iran's space should it become available. So this is all kind of a weird thing and not fun to think about, but also kind of an unprecedented situation that is I think the kind of almost natural conclusion of a haphazard, bellicose, bullying foreign policy that the United States has embarked upon in the last year or so. So I don't know, John, thoughts?
Yeah, it's obviously a very difficult situation. I mean, we've been talking on the away end from the very beginning about how you can't separate politics and nationalism from contemporary global football, and that you never really could. This is incredibly difficult. I mean, Iraq is supposed to play a playoff game in like 2 weeks, and it's not clear that the Iraqi team can travel at all safely. And so what do you do if you're FIFA? Iran has said that they won't participate in the World Cup. The Iranian women's team, some of them have been offered asylum in Australia, I believe, because they were playing in the Asian Cup. It's, obviously sport is one tiny fraction of all of what's happening. But I'm reminded of something a Major League Baseball player said once during the Black Lives Matters, like when the Black Lives Matters protests were first really growing. He said, sports is the reward for a functioning society. And I'd never thought of that before, but it really is true. Like when society collapses, sports collapses. We saw that at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. I've seen it in impoverished countries where my family and I have tried to make investments in the healthcare system that, like, when Sierra Leone is doing well and healthy, there is a Sierra Leonean Premier League. And when Sierra Leone is in a state of collapse because of Ebola or because of civil war or because of whatever else, there isn't a Sierra Leonean Premier League. Sports is the reward for a functioning society. And, I'm questioning how well our society is functioning. And as a result, I think that it is going to impact the World Cup. There's no getting around it.
Yeah, I just can't. I mean, I agree with all of that. And I love that statement by that unnamed baseball player who...
I wish I could remember his name so I could credit him, but somebody will write in and tell us.
Please do. But no, it's a pretty powerful statement. And it seems to be one of those things that it strikes me as very true just on the face of it. But I can't stop thinking about the discrepancy between what FIFA probably wanted when they awarded the World Cup to the United States, Mexico, and Canada, and what they're getting, which is, a fractured, not just North America, because of the the way Donald Trump has been, threatening to annex Canada and bomb Mexico, but then also just a kind of broader sense of global fracture that probably began with the Ukraine war and has antecedents even before that, but that feels particularly fraught right now, with the United States doing what it's doing everywhere, and with this most recent conflict just sort of taking over the news and really sort of troubling so many people around the world, including me. So yeah, it's not an ideal situation for sport. I was noticing just today, actually, I saw the news that Zoran Mamdani and Infantino met. And I was just thinking, I was like, what are they talking about? We know that the mayor of New York City is a huge football fan, a huge Arsenal fan, like me. But I don't think that's what they were talking about. I'm pretty sure they were talking about security. What happens if Iran comes? What happens if Iran doesn't come? What kind of threats there might be. I mean, there were 2 kids arrested with, improvised explosive devices in front of his Gracie mansion like last week. So there's a real sense that the World Cup isn't happening in this kind of at a perfect moment of global harmony by any stretch.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that the people who are obviously most affected by this are the people who bombs are raining down upon, not people in the U.S. But it just to go back to a story we covered earlier, it really lays bare the importance of security funding. And it looks like in Foxborough, Mass, that has reached a conclusion, and there will be games in Boston. And the Foxborough government won't be paying for security, as somebody stepped up and made that call, probably the Kraft family. We don't know exactly, but some kind of conclusion has been reached there.
Probably after listening to the away end, actually. Probably after.
Yeah, I'm sure that once they were like, oh my God, it's being covered by a hit soccer podcast, The Away End, we better get this dealt with. It's a reminder that the global fabric is really tearing at the moment. And the United States is a big part of that. And that's often been the case throughout history. I mean, the U.S. has often had a lot of global political muscle, but it's all just a reminder that a lot of what I thought of in our youth as being stable was in fact fairly fragile when it comes to American political institutions, when it comes to American foreign policy. That's not to say that, like, in the past, the U.S. covered itself in glory when it came to its foreign policy or anything. But it is to say that right now is an incredibly, I was going to say unprecedentedly, but unfortunately I think there are precedents. It's just the precedents should scare us. It is a precedentedly difficult moment.
Definitely. So, Washington Nationals pitcher Sean Doolittle, sports are the word
Sean
for
Doolittle.
Yeah.
What a great name for what a great quote.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
you have to say that you don't think of Major League Baseball players as being necessarily founts of wisdom, but I have been completely proven wrong by Sean Doolittle.
I remember a New Yorker profile of Manny Ramirez where they asked a teammate of his if Manny Ramirez felt pressure in these intense playoff situations. And his teammate said, Manny Ramirez is too dumb to feel pressure.
Something. There was a memoir by a Liverpool player, I can't remember which, in which he said that when Divock Origi scored a critical last-second goal, he only scored it because he didn't know he was in the last minute of the game.
Okay. All right. That's a good transition to the very silly next topic.
Well, silly for you. I mean, you're having a great time with this, Daniel, because you're an Arsenal fan. You're having a good old time, but there are Tottenham fans out there who are really suffering and whose lives are as real as yours and whose griefs are as real as yours. And, they're going through a hard time right now.
They are. I want to propose to you a children's book.
Okay.
So I just want to say this is very petty, and I own
very
that.
Petty.
It's very petty.
And maybe we should bring on Sean real quick as somebody who doesn't know about Arsenal and Tottenham, just so we can explain to Sean the Arsenal and Tottenham situation. Sean, do you know anything about Tottenham Hotspur?
I do not. I mean, outside of them being a team, but
Great.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Great. So I'll just give you a little bit of background. You can respond to this while Daniel just giggles in delight. So Arsenal and Tottenham are big London rivals. Okay. They both are big teams in London. They both have huge stadiums, huge followings around the world. They're both big global football clubs. And Arsenal almost always finish ahead of Tottenham. In fact, the day that they guarantee that they finish above Tottenham is called St. Tottingham's Day by Arsenal fans.
Totteringham's. Yes.
Totteringham, sorry.
Yes.
Thank you, Daniel. He really wants me to get all this right.
It's important. It's important.
And this year, that day has come very early because Arsenal are winning the Premier League right now. And Tottenham, for the first time in like living memory, are in real danger of relegation and being kicked out of the Premier League entirely and being moved down to the Championship, at which point there is a small possibility that they will actually play the team that I sponsor, AFC Wimbledon. So like next year, they could potentially be playing a team that has my logo on their butts. That's how bad this is.
Or how beautiful it is, actually, depending on how you take it. So is that enough background? Can I jump in here? So because, there's all this nonsense talk about Arsenal winning the quadruple, which is absurd. And I was actually talking with a friend of mine who said if we were to win the quadruple and Tottenham go down, it would be the quintuple. It would just feel so, because they're not just London rivals, because there's lots of teams in London, obviously. They're North London rivals, so they actually are in the same sector of London, I suppose. So anyways, I was talking with a friend, and I just sort of, it hit me, a children's book. So imagine Spurs stadium, and there's a free kick, and the Spurs defense sets up their wall. And Sean, do you know what a draft excluder is? You know this terminology?
No.
I didn't know until today that this is what it's called. The guy who lies down behind the wall to make sure no one kicks it beneath the wall.
Kicks it low.
Kicks it low, because often the wall will jump, because 98% of the time, if people are shooting directly, they shoot over the wall. On very select occasions, and it has worked, and it's always incredible, someone will sort of trick the wall into jumping, and they'll shoot low and catching the goalkeeper off guard. So what some teams have done is
they lie this guy down. But then they lie this guy down behind the wall, and that guy has to literally cover his groin, close his eyes, and hope for the best.
Right. Which is an apt metaphor. So I was imagining the opening scene of this children's book. Tottenham set up a wall. Some defender, call him, Mickey Van de Ven, whatever, lies down, and he's like, God, this is a nightmare. This is a nightmare. And he just closes his eyes. And when he wakes up, the stadium's empty. The game is over, and Tottenham's been relegated. It was like the whole thing was a dream. And then we have this children's book that is just like what he was imagining what was going to happen, and then the rest of the actual what ended up happening. And then at a certain point, it's almost like good night moon, but it's like Goodbye Spurs. And it's just like him walking around the stadium, like turning out the lights, and then he walks off into the sad, misty rain of North London. And that's it. So what do you think? I could probably get a huge book deal for this, don't you think? John, you know a lot about selling books.
Goodbye Spurs. Yeah, I think you could find an audience for it. It's you'd have to lean heavily into the Arsenal side of North London, but I think you could find an audience for it.
Yeah.
I feel that you are being a little petty, a little overly cruel to Tottenham fans.
I completely embraced that at the beginning. I said that.
That's true.
No one would sit here and deny this isn't petty. I have good friends who are Spurs fans. I just think that part of being a fan is also laughing at the misery of the other team. I don't do that in real. I don't do that in real life. I try to live my life in a way that is caring and compassionate. To my fellow man, to my friends, to my family, to my loved ones. But in this one sort of aspect of my life, I feel like it's okay for me to be the immature boy that I was at age 11. Like, what's wrong with that? I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not going to, punch someone in the face at a bar fight over this. I just think it's hilarious. I just think it's so funny. And I think it probably won't happen.
It is incredible.
It won't happen.
Probably won't happen, but it is incredible that this huge club with an 80,000 person stadium or whatever they have,
the greatest stadium in England. Yeah.
The greatest stadium in England has fallen so far that they are at real risk of next season playing me, essentially. Playing players I bought. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's incredible.
It is.
It's incredible.
It's amazing. Yeah.
It's astonishing. It is such a failure of leadership on such a profound scale to have that big of a football club, that much revenue, and not be able to find a way to squeak out 41 points in a 38-game season. It is truly astonishing. And so we don't usually talk about English club football, but we needed to on this occasion.
Yeah, I just thank you. And I thank you for that. I thank you for allowing me to bring out this aspect, this very immature, petty, childish,
source of joy for you.
Source of joy. Yeah. And I just want to say to my friends who are Spurs fans, like, in all honesty, I don't think it'll happen. You need like 2 more wins to stay up. Just as I don't think the quadruple will happen, or maybe nothing will happen. And it'll just be a regular season where Arsenal did better than Spurs. That's all.
Because of all that, is Tottenham cleaning house? Like, if this is as dire as you guys are making it seem?
Well, they keep firing managers and it keeps not working. They keep having to bring in new coaches who do an equally bad or even worse job. And they can't really fire a bunch of players, not least because all of their players are currently injured. So they have this incredible injury crisis. And in their last, I don't mean to laugh, I'm sorry, but in their last game, in the last 30 seconds, 2 of their players collided with each other, injuring each other. Ensuring that neither of them can play in the next game. So that's the level of like just incredibly bad luck they're experiencing. But it is a difficult moment for them.
Well, their manager, the current manager, is this Croatian guy named Igor Tudor, who has all he does is, he said in one of his first interviews that, like, Tottenham's got 3 problems: we have no defense, no midfield, and no attack. And so he just seems like a real like it was a real roll of the dice from the board of Spurs to hire this guy. He had no experience in English football, no experience, no connection to the club itself. They bring him on, and all he does is talk shit about his players and how bad they are, and it's it just doesn't seem to be like the best psychological approach to managing a crisis. He's just not the guy that you would want. It doesn't seem to me, but all those players, if they do get relegated, Sean, I will say this: 2/3 of their players will leave because they have buyout clauses. I'm sure they're not going to play in the championship. These are great players. They play on their international, their national teams. These are wonderful footballers who never imagined they would be in a relegation battle.
And when is the last, how long has it been since that team has been relegated, or have they ever?
They have been relegated before, but I can't remember when it was.
A long time ago,
like decades ago. Yeah.
Okay.
And when will we find out? I mean, we're recording this on Friday, March 13th. So by the time you listen to this, you will have seen Tottenham lose to Liverpool. Probably
maybe
this week,
if that's what happens. The last time they were relegated, Sean, was 1977. So right around the time that you and I and Daniel were coming into the world. In fact, just 2 months before I was born.
Wow. What a gift.
And I'm not young, but then again, neither are y'all.
Yeah. So we'll see. Very exciting times to be an Arsenal fan.
All right. On that note, we're going to take a break before Daniel continues to wax poetic for the next hour and a half about how much he loves Arsenal.
All right. We're back on the away end. John, you have a deep dive for us today.
We're going to talk about the Netherlands. This is the first time we've talked about a team that I think has an actual chance to win the World Cup. According to the bookies, the Dutch are the 8th favorite to win the World Cup. So certainly not a favorite, but also not a favorite. According to the bookies, it's about 10 times more likely that the Dutch will win the World Cup than the United States. This is a nation, as I'm sure you're aware, Daniel, of tremendous footballing passion. It's also a nation where I once lived for a few months in 2011 while I was finishing my book, The Fault in Our Stars. I lived in Amsterdam and I got to see the passion of Dutch football fans up close. It is a nation that truly loves its sports, whether that is speed skating or football. They love to wear orange. They wear a lot of orange wigs. There is a lot of passion. It is an incredible experience. I remember actually that year, the Dutch National League came down to one last game, and one of the teams in it were Ajax, who play in Amsterdam. And so we saw all the Ajax fans like marching to the train station and singing their songs, and my son was 1 at the time. And I said, Henry, we should go to a bar and watch the game. And Henry didn't really speak, so he didn't really have a choice. And Daniel, for those of you who are just listening, Daniel is making a face right now, and it's a good face. He's making a face of dubiousness.
Yeah, that's a face of like, did someone call Child Protective Services? Like, what were you thinking?
Yeah. So I took my 1-year-old to a bar to watch the Ajax game where Ajax had to win the game in order to win the league. And it was a bar just outside where we lived, just across the street, actually. And I got myself a pint of beer and settled in to watch the game. And then by the time the game actually started, there were about 400 people behind me, all wearing Ajax jerseys, all singing in unison. Henry was having a great old time. He loves a sing-along. And everything was great until the fans took over the bar, kicked out the bartender, and began pouring their own pints of beer. And then a person was standing on a chair singing behind me and became so drunk that he fell off the chair, hitting his head, and there was a lot of blood pouring off of his head. And at that point, Henry, who again was 1, was having a little less fun. So I was like, oh, we should probably make our way out of here, which proved to be pretty difficult because no longer was the bartender in control of the bar, and there were like 400 people pouring their own drinks. And we sort of weaseled our way out of there. And by the time we got out of there, Henry was in a right state. And I think that's why he still doesn't like football very much.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, Ajax won the game. What's that?
He's the boxer. He probably learned. It was his first bar brawl.
Yeah. He witnessed his first bar brawl and fell in love with boxing instead of with football, sadly.
Yeah.
But Ajax did win the game and the league. It was their 30th league title, as I recall, the third star on their uniform. But so congratulations to them. I went to the big gathering after that of tens of thousands of Ajax fans just to be a fly on the wall in a big park in Amsterdam. And it was an incredible experience. But point being,
you didn't take Henry for that.
No. By that time, I'd learned my lesson.
Good parenting decision there, John. Yeah.
Thank you, bud. People in the Netherlands love football. The Dutch pioneered so-called total football with Johan Cruyff in the 1970s. They reached the World Cup final twice in the 70s and once in 2010, but have never won a major trophy and are widely seen as the best national team never to have won one. That game in 2010 was really indicative of something that we've talked about before on the away end, which is that the old notions of like national football DNA have sort of gone away. Like the Netherlands has been known over the years for its free-flowing total football. The, fullbacks get forward and everybody's playing in attack and everybody's playing in defense. And that has kind of become global football now. But in that 2010 final, the Netherlands were actually very physical, very defensive, very tactical, and if we're being honest, probably did not deserve to win, and indeed did not win.
What I remember from that game, John, apart from the Andres Iniesta goal that won it in extra time, was Nigel de Jong planting his cleats directly in Xabi Alonso's chest and getting away with it without so much as a yellow card.
In a different era, in the video assistant referee era, that would have been a definite red. But that was sort of the approach that the Dutch took to the game overall, was very, very physical. And, it didn't work. It was probably their best chance. I mean, Spain were so much better on the ball, quicker, all that stuff. But yeah, it was one of those games that could have gone either way, and then Iniesta scored in extra time, and now we remember it as inevitable, the way that history gets written down as inevitable, when, of course, while it's happening, nobody knows what it means, as we are currently observing.
Well said.
At any rate, these days, the Dutch national team is absolutely stacked, maybe not as stacked as France or Spain or Germany or England, but we're talking about players like Cody Gakpo, Ryan Gravenberch, the aging Virgil van Dijk, all of whom play at Liverpool FC, arguably, certainly I would argue it, the best football club in the history of the world. You've got Barcelona's Frankie de Jong, you've got Arsenal's Jurrien Timber. That said, the Dutch national team is always good. The question for me is whether they're better than the best teams, and I just don't think they are. If they couldn't win in those golden generations in the 70s and in 2010, it's hard to see, for me, how they win with this group of players. It's always possible. But I think a good outcome, in talking to my Dutch friends about this before recording this, they were saying a good outcome is the quarterfinals, a great outcome is the semifinals, but of course we expect to win. And I just think that's such a beautiful notion, that like a great outcome would be the semifinals, but we still want to win. We still think we can win, because that's the nature of football, right? Like, you always are dreaming of winning. So that's what I think would be a good outcome for them, is a semifinals run, which would not be too far off what happened in the last World Cup. But I just think eventually they're going to run into a team like France, like Spain, maybe like Brazil or Argentina, that's going to be too good for them.
I have a question for you, John. Do you think that a version of that kind of diluted sense of possibility that you just described among fans is necessary for the players too, when they enter a tournament like this? Do they have to believe that the impossible can happen in order to make it possible?
Well, we've talked about this before, that professional football players, professional athletes in general, have a level of self-belief that most of us don't have. I certainly don't have that level of self-belief about anything, including my writing or my podcasting, right? Like, I don't wake up in the morning and think, I am one of the greatest players in the history of the world in soccer podcasting. And I don't have to in order to do what I do. I think that really good athletes have to. I remember once I participated in Sidney Green's basketball camp. My mother's name is Sidney Green, but there was also an Orlando Magic player named Sidney Green, spelled it differently, but same pronunciation. And Sidney Green came and spoke to us one of the days of his basketball camp. And he was like, I am the best player in the world. And I may not have made the All-Star team, I may not have won the MVP, but I believe I am the best or one of the best players in the world. And this was a very middling player on the Orlando Magic, who at the time were not a particularly good team. But he had to believe that in order to get where he got. And so I think...
To the middle.
Exactly.
To get to the middle, he had to...
He had to believe in his own greatness to rise to the middle.
Good for him. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. And I think you have, when you said that when you would watch the New York Red Bulls, you could squint and imagine yourself playing there if only you'd worked harder, I don't think you were entirely kidding, man.
I wasn't. No. And I wonder if that says more about my diluted sense of like what I was at my athletic peak versus sort of my cold and possibly harsh assessment of what I was seeing on the pitch.
I think it might. I think it might without trying to bring you down too many notches. I think it might.
No, fair.
I do think that you have to believe that you can win. I do think that you've got to go to the tournament and think, we could be the team that the miracle happens to. This could be the year. And I think believing this could be the year is a valuable thing. Like, I tell myself that before every book. I tell myself, like, this could be the book that really has a big impact, that really, has a life different from what I could imagine for it and bigger than what I could imagine for it. I've told myself that before.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you're being hard on yourself. I mean, in the sense of, all your books have had a huge impact. You've had millions of readers and you've changed people's lives and young people and middle-aged people and old people talk about your books. I mean, I come across fans of yours in Latin America all the time.
Yeah, but the next one could be really huge.
But the next one could be really huge. You're right. There's probably some people who haven't read your book, like the lawyer for the deposition last week. You still haven't reached everyone. Yeah. You haven't reached everyone. So there's reaching as many people, that would be a good outcome. Reaching every human being alive is what you expect.
That would be a great outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. The LeBron James of authors. That's the goal.
That's the
goal.
Where
you're like Clive Cussler and you died in 2020, but you still got 2 books coming out this year.
Oh my God. Wow. All right, let's take a break. Thank you for that. And we'll come back with a story.
All right, Daniel, we're back at the away end, and I believe it is time for you to make your peace with the fans of the nation of Chile.
Yes, I'll give a little context. A couple of weeks ago, when we did our sort of hierarchy of loyalties, I placed Chile at the bottom because of sort of nationalism and again, pettiness. And I was thinking about, I have a lot of wonderful Chilean friends. And so I wanted to sort of tell a really great and admirable and inspiring Chilean soccer story. The first person to tell the story was a Chilean friend of mine named Dennis Maxwell, who actually reported this for the Spanish language podcast that I run called Radio Ambulante. And if you speak Spanish, you should go listen to it. So the story basically starts on September 11th, 1973. That's the date that Chilean General Augusto Pinochet led a military coup against the civilian government. He actually bombed the equivalent of the Chilean White House, which is called the Palacio de la Moneda, in central Santiago. And the democratically elected president, Salvador Allende, ended up taking his own life. And so began, I guess, one of the most violent and brutal dictatorships in Latin America. There's a lot of competition for that title. Believe me. I'll give you the broad outline because this is a soccer podcast and not a politics or history of Latin America podcast. But there were thousands killed and disappeared. Nearly 30,000 Chileans were forced into exile. And as pertains to soccer, the national stadium in Santiago, El Estadio Nacional, was turned into a jail and a torture center. So the national team, remember the year is 1973, the national team is known as La Roja. And they were preparing for an intercontinental playoff with the Soviet Union, one of those home and away games. And the stakes are super high because the winner on aggregate goes on to the 1974 World Cup that was going to be played in West Germany. So the team was on a brief tour. They're playing friendly matches before the trip to Moscow. And one of the stars of that team was a guy named Carlos Caszely. Carlos was a much loved player. And actually, Dennis interviewed him, and he said that it was surprising to him that after the games, Chilean fans or people would come up to him, and no one wanted to talk about soccer. Everyone wanted to ask what was happening in Chile, and sometimes they had more news than what was happening than what people in Chile had back home because there was so much censorship. This was like in the immediate weeks after the coup. Eventually, the team flies to the USSR. Which at that point had broken diplomatic relationships with the new military dictatorship in charge of Chile. And so Carlos and the rest of the team, they're treated as if they're like emissaries and supporters of this coup. They're booed for the entire 90 minutes in Moscow. But somehow they come away with a scoreless draw to take back home to Santiago. So now we're up to the second game. It's 0-0. The second game is going to take place on November 21st, 1973. But there's a problem, which is the Chilean military, as I mentioned, are using the national stadium as a place to keep dissidents and students or people that might be perceived as a threat, and they have them in jail basically, and they're been torturing them and stuff. That story's leaked out by that point, and the Soviet Union says it refuses to play in a stadium that's quote soaked in blood. The Chilean military obviously denies that there's any detainees in the stadium. And so to kind of adjudicate this question, FIFA sends an inspector. So Dennis actually interviewed a few people who were detainees in the stadium. We know that this is true. One of them was this guy named Jorge Montealegre. And he says on the day of that FIFA was inspecting the grounds of the national stadium, they were basically forced into the bowels of the stadium and at the point of a gun are told, don't make a sound. FIFA comes in, takes a look around, is like, oh, everything's fine. There were probably like 7,000 detainees in the stadium at the time, but FIFA, what do you know? They didn't see anything. And so they declare the stadium fit and the game has to go forward. The thing is that it's not clear at that point if the Soviet Union is going to send its team or not. No one really knows. The game is scheduled, and Carlos Caszely told Dennis that even on that day, until the whistle blew, the players really didn't even know if another team was going to come out of the tunnel and into the stadium. If this was a normal match, you know, a game between two countries that were literally playing for a place at the World Cup, the biggest sporting event on Earth, you would imagine a packed stadium with like 50, 60,000 fans chanting, singing for the national team. But this was not that. These were not normal times. There were like 17,000 fans, which is really like a smattering of people. And the game itself, bizarrely, lasted like a minute. Less than a minute, actually. The 7,000 detainees, in case you're wondering, they'd been moved to a separate detention facility for this game. So the USSR didn't send their team. So the Chileans are lined up against nobody, literally against nobody. But for just to kind of go through the protocol of it, they have to kick off and they have to score. So they kick off and they just basically kind of look around, walk the ball down the field, and then kick the ball into an open net. The ref, who incidentally was a Chilean ref, not a FIFA ref, blows the whistle. The game is over. Chile wins 1-0 and goes on to the 1974 World Cup. So crazy. Imagine at the stadium and you're playing against nobody. So at the actual World Cup, Chile does pretty miserably. A couple of draws and a loss. They have one goal to show for their troubles. But probably the most important part of this World Cup campaign comes before the team even leaves Chile, when they're invited to the Palacio to meet the dictator, Augusto Pinochet. And he's going to wish them good luck, kind of this, you know, protocol thing that they do. And here's where Carlos Caszely does something really remarkable. Pinochet is going down the line, shaking everyone's hand, and Carlos Caszely just puts his hands behind his back and refuses to shake Pinochet's hand. This is an act of extraordinary courage in this moment. There were many people in prison, you know, thousands at that point, people heading in exile, people being forcibly disappeared, tons of fear. And I just can't say enough about the dignity and the bravery of someone like that in that moment to take that decision that, you know, could easily cost you your life. But he does it. And what's kind of beautiful about this story, and one of the reasons I love it, is it kind of comes full circle, right? So about 10 years later, Caszely retires from professional football. It's 1985, and there's kind of a testimonial farewell match organized. And it's being held at the Estadio Nacional. Jorge Montalegre, who we talked to in this episode, he was 17, 18 at the time that he was detained in the stadium. He told us that when he was a kid, he used to go to these games at that stadium with his family. And then after he was detained there, he could never go back until Caszely's farewell game. Caszely had become famous and kind of beloved among people opposed to the dictatorship because he took that kind of brave decision not to shake hands with Pinochet. Jorge says that he was at that game and it was cathartic and it was healing, in particular for one reason, the same reason that no television channels chose to broadcast that game, because of Caszely's kind of unique position within the culture and within soccer. His testimonial became one of the first mass displays of defiance. So people singing his name, but also singing, Iba a caer, 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 which is one of the famous chants against the dictatorship. It's going to fall, the dictatorship will fall, right? No channel showed it on TV because this was still in the middle of the Pinochet regime, but one radio station did, Radio Cooperativa, and people all over the country heard it. And this is just one of those moments I think about a lot. And I think about what it means to be brave, what it means to show courage, what it means to show dignity in moments when maybe it would be easier just to reach out and shake the dictator's hand. So within 3 years, in 1988, when the continuation of the dictatorship was put up to a vote, the very famous plebiscite of Chile, to many people's surprise, the country stood up and voted no. So anyway, I just want to give a shout out to Carlos Caszely, one of the greats. And of course, to my friend Dennis and everyone at Ambulante who helped produce that story. But yeah, it's one of those stories that I just love.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful story. And I think one that has many resonances for our moment. One that resonates across the globe right now, but especially in my own life as an American, it resonates as well. So thank you for that story, Daniel. And it's really, really beautifully told. Worthy of, dare I say it, a MacArthur Genius Grant winner.
I should hear it in Spanish.
By the way, I will stop talking about your MacArthur Genius Grant whenever. Okay, let's get to the mail. We're gonna cover some recent emails we got, beginning with this one from Rachel, who writes, "Hi, John and Daniel. This is not a question, but I just wanted to say I was inspired by this podcast to actually watch soccer. And I went to my first game tonight, specifically DC United versus Inter Miami, held at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore. I had a wonderful time and would definitely go to another match if given the chance. Rachel. Rachel, that makes me so happy to know that you went to a actual football game as a result of this podcast. Thank you."
I remember the first time I took my oldest son to a actual live soccer game in a stadium, and we brought him up the stairs. We'd watched a ton of soccer on TV, and he played it in the park with his friends. And we walked up the stadium steps, and when you step out through the concourse and you can see the field, he did like that, like a sharp intake of breath, and he said, "This is so unusual for my eyes."
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I do love that. It's one of those phrases that your kids say that you remember forever, and it's true because the experience of being at the stadium is so different. You really have, this kind of vantage point that you otherwise would never get. You don't see it on TV. You don't see the whole field. You don't see where the players are moving. You don't feel the way an entire stadium holds its breath right before a goal. Right before a chance. It's a really remarkable experience. I think the MLS honchos should give us free tickets because we're inspiring people to go to the games. Just putting it out there.
Absolutely. I'll drive to Cincinnati to watch Cincinnati FC.
Sure, why not? In the same way that we helped tilt the balance for the Foxborough City Council, I think we might really be what's going to get the MLS numbers up where they need to be.
Well, New England Revolution owner Robert Kraft is a fan of the pod. I think we know that. We don't know it for a fact, but I think we know it by inference. You know, so yeah, it makes sense that we were able to kind of settle that Foxborough Mass issue with our coverage.
I'm really proud of us, John. Really proud of us.
Me too, man. Me too.
Okay, I want to read this email mostly because I love it, but I also want to recommend a documentary that Lucas will love. So Lucas writes, "Hello everyone. Thank you for producing such a wonderful show, which helps me discover new ways to think about my favorite sport. My wife's family is from El Salvador, and mine is from Italy and Ireland. Both of us and our families take both great joy and more often experience a good deal of pain because of the respective results of our country's national teams. My question comes out of your conversations about relative expectations of our teams and what counts as success. So which of these scenarios will most likely happen soonest? 1, El Salvador qualifies for the World Cup. 2, Ireland progresses further than England in a major tournament. 3, Italy wins a World Cup."
That's tough. None of those are super likely. I could see Italy winning a World Cup before I could see Ireland progressing further than England in a major tournament. El Salvador is the wild card for me.
Yeah. Honestly, if El Salvador had it, this was the year. The heavy hitters of CONCACAF were not in the qualifying matches, so this was the time.
Curacao made it, for God's sakes.
Yeah. I'm sorry to Lucas's wife, but this was really a big missed opportunity here. But I used to play in Oakland, California. I think I've mentioned a dozen times. And so we played a league with my wonderful club team, Left Wing FC, and the ref was Salvadoran. And one day, after the game, we were chatting up the referee, as one does, and it turned out that he had been on the World Cup team in El Salvador in 1982 when they went to Spain. Yeah.
Wow.
And he was living in the Bay Area and reffing games. He was probably in his 50s. I don't know. I mean, hard to tell. And it was kind of remarkable to have this. I mean, it was like, for me, a brush with fame. Oh my God, someone who played in the World Cup. Now, El Salvador, that World Cup, was just brutalized, basically. They lost all 3 matches. And they played a game, and I can't remember right now off the top of my head if it was against Hungary. It might have been against Hungary, but they lost 10-1, which is one of the worst results ever in the history of the World Cup. However, there is on YouTube, you can find it, Lucas, and anybody, really wonderful documentary called Uno, La Historia de un Gol, One, the history of a goal. That is the story of the one goal that El Salvador scored in that World Cup. And it's a lovely documentary. And it sort of actually gets at this thing we've been talking about, which is like, what would it mean to different countries? And you get the sense from watching that documentary that what really matters was being there and then having this moment to celebrate, because the players celebrate that one goal as if they'd won the entire thing. It's beautiful. So yes, Lucas, go check out that documentary. And we have one last question.
Yeah, we'll read this email from Robert, who says, longtime fan of John's work and newfound fan of Daniel's. I just wanted to write in to thank you guys for helping fuel my love of footy. A decade ago, I dated a wonderful woman from Australia who hated the Australian Football League, and together we became longtime Timbers, AFC Fiorentina, and Liverpool fans. Since her passing in 2016, as well as a number of other factors, I only allow my love of the beautiful game to exist in pop-ups on my sports apps and occasionally scarf wearing when patronizing my local German food place. But I saw a reel on Facebook of you two and knew I had to immediately binge all 7 episodes, and I've already ordered a Netherlands kit and a fresh Fiorentina Batistuta jersey, as my old one seems to have vanished from the closet. The passion was always there, but it took 2 great writers and hilarious podcasters to rekindle the embers. Thank you both, and Sean, so much. Much love, and pray that Fiorentina rebounds and avoids relegation. Robert.
Wow. That's such a great email. I'm so pleased, Robert. I'm so happy that we could have been a part of that. I also want to commend you. The Batistuta, great player, obviously. And Fiorentina, lovely jerseys, man. The purple kits.
Some of the best jerseys in the game. You hope that they avoid relegation just so that they can stay. I mean, in general, Serie A jerseys are the best. Like Venezia has incredible jerseys. Parma has great jerseys. But man, those Fiorentina jerseys are gorgeous.
Top notch. Absolutely. And quite a lovely coincidence that you did Netherlands for Robert today on today's show.
Yeah, it was a gift.
Yeah. Wonderful. Man, that warms my heart. And my only question is, what is German food? Which I don't know the answer to, but
it's all like sausages, brats, some sauerkraut. We used to have a German when I was in my internet dating phase, Daniel, before Sarah and I rekindled our high school acquaintanceship and fell in love and everything. I'd had this internet dating phase, and there was a German restaurant just down the block from where I lived, and that's where I would take all of my internet dates. It was called the Brauhaus, and they served beer in glass boots. In Chicago. And I remember taking a Hannah Arendt scholar to the Brauhaus, and she was like, what the hell is this place? But it was great, man. It was,
Hold on a second. I'm taking off my headphones because I need to show you something.
Okay. While Daniel's gone, I'll just say that, like, I was not a genius when it came to internet dating. It'll surprise you to learn. Look at you.
Wow, look at that glass boot. Was it like this? Was this where you
It
took
was
your
bigger
dates?
than that, but it was
that is a dainty little. This is a dainty little Marco Rubio boot. Yeah,
that's these were proper glass boots of beer. You wouldn't feel great after you drank one. But looking back, I mean, I often look back at my 20s and think, what the hell was I doing? But I look back in that and I just think, what the hell was I doing? Why didn't I? I could have taken them anywhere. I took them to the Brauhaus, and no wonder I had so few second dates.
No wonder. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to talk. I only went on one internet date and it was terrible, and I'm so glad to be married. God, I missed that whole thing.
So glad.
Yes.
Yeah. Oof. I would not be good at it. I wasn't good at it when I had to do it. It's kind of a miracle, and I know that we need to end the podcast, but I'll just say here at the end, when no one's listening anyway, that it's kind of a miracle that Sarah fell for me. Like,
We all thought
somebody
that.
recently. I know. I remember when my first book came out, Sarah was at the book launch party in Birmingham, and Dr. Cooper, our high school history teacher, said, "What are you doing here?" And she said, "I'm dating John." And he said, "Why?"
Wow. Dr. Cooper. You study history, you really don't have time for sort of social niceties. You just say it like it is. God, what a great teacher he was.
He was a great teacher.
Still is. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks to everybody for listening and allowing us to wax poetic about our earlier days. We appreciate you being here so much, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, thanks to our producer Sean, Titone, and Kurt Guerin. And remember to send your emails awayendpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much. I'll see you next week, John.
All right.